Today on episode 148 of the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, we speak to best-selling author and former U.S. Army Combat Engineer Brent Magnussen, and he's going to tell you how you can set yourself up for success from the moment you wake up. That's right, folks. We're going to be focusing in on routines and success today for yourself. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it.
Welcome to this episode of Moving Forward Leadership. Stick around and learn how to achieve, excel, and become a leader that people willingly follow. Lead, don't boss. And now, here's the host of our show, Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy.
Yes, welcome one, welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It is your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, and welcome to the podcast where we focus on the three domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself so you can be the best leader possible, leading your team so you can build those high-performing teams, and finally, leading your organization so you can drive that organizational output, whatever that looks like. And here, we combine my 20 years of military experience as a senior officer with guests like Brent today to give you the most complete leadership podcast going. And it's so great to have you here. And if you want more, feel free to go to movingforwardleadership.com for everything we got going on. Folks, it is the last episode of 2020. And I felt like it was a great time to focus on ourselves as leaders. You notice the last episode with Nelson, that was all about goal setting. And now this one is a very similar feel and theme to it in goal setting and setting up your routines. Why? So that you can lead yourself. I've said it so many times on the show. If you cannot lead yourself first, you cannot lead others. It's just like when you get on an airplane, which God knows when that last time that was for you. But when you get on the airplane and you get the safety briefing and they say, put your oxygen mask on first in the event of a cabin depressurization before helping others. And why? Because if you pass out, then you're no good to anyone. So put that mask on first, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Brent Magnussen is the best-selling American author. He's a professional speaker, former U.S. Army Combat Engineer. Chimo, those engineers out there know what I'm talking about. He's an adventure seeker, and he's a proclaimed self-human subject for peak social and physical development. This year, he released his much-anticipated book, Roger Up, which we go into, and we talk about topics such as routines and the motivation behind his book and why routines are so important to have a successful day, and portions of famous people's morning routine, which was common. He actually interviewed, I don't remember how many famous individuals such as Tony Robbins, Jocko Willink, and so on and so forth about their morning routines, and he actually has it in the book, and we unlock those secrets in this show today. And then probably the most important thing and the best thing you're going to get out of this show is how you can hold yourself accountable to your morning routine. I personally have a morning routine, which I go through, and we actually talk about that in this episode. He asked me, because Brent, he's a researcher, and he doesn't stop researching when he sees an opportunity. So he saw one with me, and he jumped at it and took it. So we talk about my morning routine as well. Anyway, I've talked about this in the past. If you haven't heard me talk about it in the past, because it's been a while, you're in for a treat today. If you have heard me talk about it in the past, guess what? There's still so many great nuggets in here. So you know what? Without further ado, why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Brent Magnussen on how you can develop yourself to Roger Up. Brent, man, welcome to the show. It's so awesome to have you here.
Thanks, Scott. Real excited to be on, man.
We got a former Army dude from the South on the show today. We got a current Army dude from the North on the show today, i.e. me. We're going to have a great conversation. before we dive into the nuts and bolts of your book and your thoughts about leadership and all that, I'd love to just get a background about you. Get some street cred for the audience out there that's listening to the show, going and say, "Hey, who's this Brent Magnussen guy? Why should I care?" So don't you start us off with that?
Yeah. So street cred. All right. Let me see. What do I have? Well, I've never been arrested, so I don't know how much street cred I have. But I grew up about 20 minutes outside of Chicago in the burbs, the hard, mean streets of Oak Brook Terrace. There's a lot of room for play there. And grew up wrestling and playing soccer, and always knew the military, specifically probably the Army, was going to be the biggest backup plan if I didn't come the next Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi. I did not make the big leagues, if you will, in soccer. And like the vast majority of the men in my family, I took the military route. It was kind of instilled at me at a young age that, you're going to give something to your country before you ask for something from it. And like my dad and uncles and grandfathers before me, enlisted at 19 and took off. Got some great years in, got banged up a little bit, but learned some amazing lessons, and lessons that I think are so important for young guys, 18 to 22, 18 to 23, especially myself. I embraced my inner knucklehead a little longer, well into my later teens, and it was one of the best things I ever did. And then after that, I took that just a little over 4 years of military Army experience as a combat engineer, and really applied those self-leadership skills and became entrepreneurial and just trying to live my best life now. And the book Roger Up is out, and it lays out a lot of the core principles of what I learned, not just growing up, but what I learned in the military, and all the trials and tribulations and successes and failures all wrapped into one. And here we are.
That's awesome, man. No, that's great. Now, I love the concept of leading yourself, right? Because here at Moving Forward Leadership, we have the 3 domains of leadership that we discuss, and I interview world-class guests like yourself on those domains, and that is leading yourself. I.e., how do you become that top performer? How do you go about goal setting? How do you go achieving? Next is leading your team. So how do you build high-performing teams? And finally, leading your organization. How do you take care of that institutional part? And a lot of people discount the importance of leading yourself. A lot of people go, well, this leadership is not about myself, it's about others. Well, yes, but at the same point, I believe that if you're not at your top performing, if you can't take care of yourself, you don't take care of your health, you don't take care of your fitness, if you don't take care of your own personal development and growth and all this, then you are actually limiting your ability to lead others, to lead your organization, to inspire them, because you end up just, withering away ultimately. So that's why I love having people like yourself on the show to discuss their work, discuss their passions, and their books such as yours, Roger Up. So I guess my first question regarding the book is, what was the inspiration for you after 4 years of military service, some deployments there? What made you go, you know what? I'm going to talk or write a book that discuss this personal growth and personal development from that mindset.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. And real quick, just to touch on what you said about leadership, I think it's so important, because if you go to Google and just type in leadership, it's going to say leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act towards achieving a common goal. And I think it gets really lost there, because like you said, if you're not squared away yourself, if you're not getting up and practicing what you're preaching every day, it's impossible. You can bullshit yourself and other people only for so long. I'm not going to go to the gym and ask a 350-pound guy who's got Big Mac or, donuts dripping off of his T-shirt to train me to get a 6-pack. I'm not going to go out and ask someone to help me become a successful entrepreneur if they're making $30,000 a year and struggling to pay their bills. And I think there's a lot of fluff online. There's a lot of people with, Instagram and Facebook that are I mean, you got literally people going to the bank or borrowing $10,000 or $15,000 cash from their parents, taking a picture of it next to someone else's Lamborghini, giving their parents back the money, and taking that picture with some, high-res iPhone and putting that on Instagram, and then putting out a coaching program that's complete nonsense and tricking people into thinking that they can teach them how to be a leader or an entrepreneur. And I think the biggest thing that made me write this book is two things. One, I wanted to write it for the 18-year-old version of me, because if I had this book when I was 18, I'd be so much more squared away so much sooner. And two is because of all the BS out there online and all these fake gurus and, all these wantrepreneurs and all of these supposed leaders that haven't left mom's basement and haven't really done anything in life that I can learn from or anyone else can learn from. And so I kind of wanted to accomplish both of those tasks, put out something that you can take practical action with right away. It's essentially a blueprint from the second you get up in the morning for at least the first couple hours of the day, which for me is the most important thing. And it's just reinforcing those strong ideas that, the more squared away you are, the better off you're going to be for everyone else. And hopefully that's what we've accomplished.
I love it. And I love that part about the entrepreneurs and, the junk that's out there online right now, especially in the leadership space. And the piggyback off of that for a second, I'm going to get on my soapbox. And the thing that drives me nuts are those people out there, the leadership gurus, the leadership so quote unquote coaches, who just keep posting quotes from other people out there. It drives me nuts. It absolutely I actually did a full, not a full podcast, but I have a secondary segment, which I refer to as the Monday Leadership Minute, which comes out Monday mornings, obviously, where I discuss a topic for about 5 minutes that is, on the top of my mind, relevant to the upcoming interview show that gets released on Wednesday or whatnot. And one week I just went for 5 minutes, just completely ripping apart people who just do that, because it's like, great, but quotes are meaningless unless you actually use them in a particular way. Just to throw up, the leadership is art of influencing people. Well, great. What does that actually mean? And what does that actually do for me as a leader? Nothing, right? But if you actually apply it and you say, okay, in this situation, and you explain stuff to people and you throw in a quote from individual and you back it up with other examples and practicality, that's where it actually meets the road. And that's why we're here. We're applying the lessons that you and I have learned throughout our experience in our lives. So, yeah, quotes drive me nuts, as you can tell. Now, back to what you were talking about, though, and the importance of a morning routine. I love it. I have a morning routine where I'm up at 5 a.m. every day, do my workout, doing my things that set me up well for the day. And I totally noticed that the days I don't do that are my bad days. So from your perspective, why is it that occurs, and why is the morning aspect so important for us to, set ourselves up for success throughout the rest of the day?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most important questions. And I think if I'm being completely honest, I think the number one thing I took away from the Army is the morning routine. And at the time, I didn't even know it was a morning routine. I was a 19 or 20-year-old guy stationed in Germany with my first combat engineer unit, and getting up at 0600 for PT every morning, physical training for your civilians. It was just part of the job. But the more I realized that it was just reinforcing consistency and discipline. And I think consistency and discipline are the two biggest things involved in whether it's success or leadership or really anything. And those are the two biggest things I got from that. And after a while, I started realizing, wow, okay, there's a reason that this is mandatory. There's a reason, unless your leg's broken or you just didn't wake up literally, there's a reason that this is so mandatory every morning. And it goes much further than the unit wanting you to do a certain amount of push-ups or go for a 3 or 4 mile run every morning. It's because we have to have consistency throughout the unit, because when we deploy, you rely on the guy to your left, you rely rely on the guy to your right, the person behind you at your 6, and all of these people have to work in unison. And if they've all had the same consistency and they all have close to the same level of discipline, it's going to work a lot easier. And you're only strong as your weakest link, that old saying, and it's very true. And I think what I took from that is, okay, the more consistent I am and the more I lead myself with getting up every morning. You get up at 5, mine is 5:30. I have first chapter of the book is the 0530 blueprint. And it takes certainly from my time in the military, but it also takes from, I've been out for a long time. So it has a lot to do with what I've done as an entrepreneur and where I've found success. And then I was fortunate to get a bunch of different people like Tony Robbins, Jocko Willink, Mel Robbins to contribute and get their ideas on what the morning routine means to them. Tim Ferriss and all of these people to a T said by far and away the most important aspect of their success in any capacity was what they did the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day. And every one of those people that I just rattled off, which are all super successful in their respective fields, they have so much respect for their morning routine. And it's like war. It's non-negotiable. It cannot change. Just like if your kid was choking and you had to give them the Heimlich to save them, these people look at their morning routine with the same intensity. Like it's non-negotiable. Just like I have to save that kid's life. I have to get up at this time. I have to execute. And then everything else in the day is going to be easier.
That's super impressive. You got contributions from all those people. And if anyone out there follows Jocko, you'll notice every day on his Instagram he posts a picture of when he's at the gym, and it's like 4:30 or 4:15 in the morning or 4:23, stuff like that. So you can tell how important it is to him specifically. Now, you're right. Every day at 4:30, he's got that posted, and I've spent a little time with Jocko, and he is just he's a different animal. I've met a lot of people, especially a lot of military people, a lot of high-speed military people, especially in the last few years since I started speaking professionally, and this year, especially with the book being out. And Jocko's just a different animal. And it's really cool being around people like that, because sometimes, Instagram and Facebook can inflate people and you don't know, is that really how they are? And when you're around them, you just spend 10 minutes talking to that guy, and that intensity is real. And you leave a conversation with a guy like that and you want to be better. And he even said, I know you hate quotes, and I do too, but some quotes are important, especially from people that are actually performing. And he says, waking up early was the first example I noticed in the SEAL teams in which discipline was really the difference between being good and being exceptional. Right. And if you're taking it from a guy like that, who still, he's not in the military anymore. He's not going to war anymore, but he gets up and leads every day by example. And it's powerful stuff. Yeah, absolutely is. And I'll just do a side note. That is a proper way to use a quote right there.
Well, thank you, sir.
Now, with Jocko and Tony and all these huge name people that you got input from, was there a common theme outside? Obviously, yes, morning routines is super important and is key to my success. But was there outside of that a common theme to them, or were there little pieces that you kind of brought together and say, okay, out of all these great people, these are all the different pieces that make up a great morning routine? Or was there something common amongst them all that stood out?
There certainly were. And for like Tony and Jocko and a few other people that I've actually been able to talk to and actually have a conversation with. And then for other people whose morning routines I studied, people like Beethoven, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Napoleon Hill. Some of these people are dead, but I was able to get in and really research and get into the guts of what they did. And a guy like Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich and some amazing books, and Warren Buffett, who's obviously a very successful guy financially, Tim Ferriss, and especially Beethoven. What Beethoven did, all these guys do something, and these gals do two things across the board. They have their dead set time that they get up, and that does not change, whatever time it is. For you, it's 5. For me, it's 0530. For some people, it's 6. But that doesn't change, and that is treated like war. It is non-negotiable. It doesn't matter if you were out drinking till 3 a.m, if you just didn't have a good night's sleep, which a lot of guys like us from the military sometimes have trouble sleeping. It does. You are up at the same time every day. It's non-negotiable. And your circadian rhythm will eventually catch up. You get so locked into that morning time. And again, it's just that self-discipline every day. So these guys and gals are all getting up at the same time, and they're all making it theirs. And I mentioned Beethoven. Beethoven was, obviously, he's an interesting guy, but he was also crazy. And I say that respectfully, because he did something every single morning. He would prepare his coffee with 60 coffee beans. Now, this is before espresso makers and everything else. This is a long time ago. So this guy would literally get up and count 60 coffee beans, not 59, not 62. And he had figured that was the exact amount of coffee beans required for his perfect cup of coffee. And as crazy as that sounds, and if we do the science, that's a tremendous amount of coffee. So Beethoven must have literally been bouncing off the walls. It was unique to him. And as disciplined as all these people are, and as much as Tony gets up at the same time every day, and the first thing he does is cold water immersion. And I'm a big cold shower guy. Same thing with Jocko, up at the same time every day, and he holds himself accountable. He posts a picture. I don't think Jocko posts a picture of his watch at 4:30 in the morning every day because it's sexy. He does it because he's holding himself accountable, and that's where people get lost. That's not so much for show as it is for him too, and it's a powerful tool. So I think that consistency of getting up the same time every day and doing something like Beethoven, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but something to you that's unique and consistent is, for me, and everything I've seen with it, I got obsessed with morning routines, and those are the two biggest things I found.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love Jocko's post, and I never actually thought about it in that way. And as soon as you said the accountability piece, I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense. It's not about him trying to be famous or him trying to increase his following. It's him publicly showing, that he is there, that he is doing what he said that he's going to do, and holding himself accountable. Because now with his following, that the day that he doesn't post one of those pictures, someone's going to be like, hey, where's the photo?
Absolutely. And people get lost in that, and they don't see that. And I'm fortunate enough that I've had the opportunity to meet and talk to Jocko, but I also have the opportunity to know guys that served with him. And he was doing that shit 10 years ago, before he was ever on Instagram, before he was even out of the SEAL teams. And the coolest thing about that is you're right. He doesn't post that 4:30 on his watch picture because he needs more followers. He does that because he's a savage, and he's been a savage for so long. And now, because he does have this cult following, because he's put out some amazing books, because he's really practicing what he preaches, people respond to that. But that guy's been doing that for 20 years. And just because he's been on Instagram doing it for a few years now, make no mistake, that guy is a 100% savage, just like Goggins or some of these other guys. He's practicing what he preaches. And the fact that he's able to share that and motivate other people is just a cherry on top of the fact that he's holding himself accountable. And accountability is a huge thing that gets lost in all the fluff online, all the goal setting courses, all the leadership courses. I see so many of these, and almost none of these have any bit, let alone a huge part or component that addresses accountability. Right. And to see Jocko holding himself accountable every day, personally and publicly, is awesome.
So the listener out there is like, oh, that's great for Jocko. He's doing that. He's motivated and disciplined, and he has this following now that's going to call him out and all this stuff. Great. But I'm average Joe. I am a leader. I just got promoted into this management position, my first one. I got 5 people that I'm leading right now, or I'm not even in a leadership role, but I just want to increase my skills for when I get there, and I'm interested in this topic because I do want to get better. How do I go about holding myself accountable? It's great for Jocko to have this, but I'm just average Joe. I'm just me. how do I go about and holding myself accountable? Do you dive into that in your book? And if,
I do.
what are some of the practical tips out there for the people?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny we're on this huge conversation about Jocko. I had no idea we'd go there, and it's cool because Jocko's a great dude. But it's I mean, with all due respect, how is he different than me? I mean, he may have a little more chiseled jawline and a bigger following online, but Jocko puts his pants on the same way I did this morning. He might have done it an hour earlier, but at the end of the day, he's just applying at the highest level what he learned. And there's nothing that the guy or gal out there listening to this right now, whether you're 23, 33, or 43, or even 53 or 63, can't implement or execute. And just because you didn't have the same training he did and it wasn't reinforced every day doesn't mean you can't go out and find that. You can find that in books. I'm a huge reader. I'm a huge believer that readers are leaders. And one more quote that is really powerful was from Jim Rohn, who was actually Tony Robbins' mentor. And he said, formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. And I'm a huge believer that, the person you become 3 years from now is because of two things: the books you read and the people you meet. More importantly, the people you surround yourself with. And I'm telling people all the time, we're launching a coaching program later this year, and I've had the opportunity to work with some great leaders. And the biggest thing that I'm telling people is you have to develop skills that make you attractive to the marketplace, and you have to surround yourself with people that have what you want. If you're a mid-level management guy or gal, or if you're working in HR or whatever the hell you're doing, if you want something, go out and find the people that are doing it at a high level and start surrounding yourself with them, no matter what it takes. We're in the easiest time ever. You can literally go on Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram and start searching people wherever you are. I don't care if you're in Canada, Africa, wherever. You can start looking for people that are doing what you want to do and start surrounding yourself with them. You can start reading the books that specifically address the issues that you're struggling with. And I just think it's so easy right now, and people are constantly looking for, who do I follow? What do I do? Just start who has what you want, who's doing what you want at a high level. Do you want to be upper management? And, do you want to be doing X, Y, and Z? Well, find the guy or gal that is in that position at your company or another company or online, and start building a relationship with them. And I mean, essentially get a mentor in that capacity. And it's never been easier. And it baffles me that more people aren't taking advantage of that, because it's out there and it's ripe for the picking. There are so many people out there in leadership positions that are just crushing it, that I promise you would not mind having someone they could mentor, because it's giving back. Because I promise you, someone mentored them and someone mentored the person that mentored them. It's just a constant cycle.
The top is the loneliest place. Colin Powell said that once. But it doesn't have to be. Instead, you can find people to talk to, people to run ideas by, people to help you figure out solutions to the problems that you're facing right now as a leader. And see, I felt alone once, and I decided to start the podcast. And with the podcast, I decided that I needed to help people like you more. So that's why I started the Pivot for Leadership Facebook group. Leadership skills for managers to be leaders, not bosses. You can find it at movingforwardleadership.com/group. And come join us. It's completely free for you to join us and talk leadership with us day in, day out. So check us out again at movingforwardleadership.com/group. Now back to the show. Love it. Absolutely love it. And I love the part where you said, people like that just put their pants on the same way. And a lot of times that's how, we normal people just look at these, famous people and it's like, or people think, what they achieve, I can't do it because of this reason, that reason, and the other, BS reason, right? But the reality is we all have the same ability. We all have the same amount of time to us. We all have the same opportunities if you go looking for them. So yes, you have the ability to change your routine, to be able to get up in the morning and go about your day and holding yourself accountable. The tools are there. You can just do it with your friend list on Facebook. It doesn't have to have, you don't have to have a following on Instagram of like 20,000 people to hold yourself accountable. You can do it with your spouse. You can do it with just tracking it yourself in an app and looking for those streaks and stuff like that. So
100%.
Right? Now with your book, what are some of the other aspects we've talked about? Setting this time and having those common things that you do every morning. What are some of the other aspects that are important to a morning routine out there that you highlight in your book?
Yeah. So for me, I'm a big morning guy, and I know it doesn't fit with everyone. There are people that work graveyard shifts, so they're actually getting home when a lot of us are getting up. But it kind of goes back to the 80-20 rule. At least 80% of the normal working folks out there are getting up in the morning, whether it's 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. And my biggest thing is just encouraging people to get up half an hour earlier than they usually do, sticking to that time, and just sticking to, we had a saying in the Army, we would scream it, especially in basic training. And I realized it was effective brainwashing at the time, and I never knew why we were screaming. We were always screaming something. And it was, we do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. Excuse me. And we would scream it. We do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. And this is at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning. But when you actually start doing that and 9 a.m. rolls around and you're like, wow, I've been hitting it hard for 3.5, in your case, 4 hours. Everything else gets easier. And for me, the common theme I saw in building my morning routine and following all these different people is it's hard charging for the first 30 to 60 minutes. Some people call it their golden hour, their hour of power. Everyone has their own little, name for it. But what you do the first 30 minutes, and I take from a lot of different things, like Steve Jobs, for example, loved, hated, a very hard leader, set in his ways, but incredibly effective. And one of the things he did, and I'll just read off his quote because these are his words. He says, "For the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something." That's something I do. I look in the mirror every morning, and not to see if my hair looks good or if I need to wash my face. I look in the mirror every morning because I want to look at myself and size myself up and say, okay, am I hitting it hard today? I didn't sleep very good last night, or, I've had a rough week or whatever. My relationship ended. I got fired from my job. I found out a family member has cancer, whatever it is. Am I still leading myself? Because, at the end of the day, that's really all I have is my own self-leadership and my own self-discipline. And that's the common theme I find throughout all these morning routines. And there are extra things in there. I certainly have my core things. The first thing I do when I wake up is smile. Whenever I go out and speak, I'll ask the crowd, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, by show of hands, how many people can remember the last time they woke up and the first thing they did before they even got out of bed was smile big, like you just fell in love or won the lottery. And usually no one raises their hand. Again, if it's 20 people or 200 people. And what that does is it changes your psychology. Even if you're having the shittiest morning and you just had the shittiest day, for some reason, when you smile really big, like a cheesy smile, it tricks your body and it tricks your psychology. And you're thinking, okay, well, we're smiling. So for some reason, something must be going well. Let's get out of bed. Then the second thing I do is I make the bed every morning. It's non-negotiable. It's one of the best things I got from the military. And people laugh and they're like, you didn't learn tactics or maneuvers or blah, 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 blah. No, one of the best things I got from the military is I made my bed every single day, and I still do. And it's instilled in my 9-year-old stepdaughter, and it's just non-negotiable. And it's what we in the military call task completion. And the more of those you get, the earlier in the day, by the time 9 a.m. rolls around, I've smiled, I've made my bed, I've hydrated my body, I've done my breathing, and I've put in some work as far as working out, and I've rewarded myself. I've paid myself first. And every day when you can get up and by 8 or 9 a.m., you can look at those different notches you have that you've completed, those tasks. It's a really powerful thing. So for me, those are the biggest things.
That's so awesome. I always find the big thing for me in doing everything in the morning that I do is there are no potential excuses anymore because it's done. My workout. So for me, I get up, I work out. I get my family squared away because they leave.
I was just going to ask you, and I know this is your podcast and I'm a guest and I appreciate you having me on, but one of the big things, especially coming off of a 30-day radio tour and meeting a lot of people, I don't often get enough time to ask people about, and I'm just as interested in you as you might be in me. I'm curious, what is your morning routine? Because obviously I'm obsessed with morning routine. So like, what is yours from, you said you get up at 05. What is the first 30 minutes of your day, if I can ask?
Yeah, no, that's actually, I'll go even beyond. I'll go about the first 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So I get up and so my wife is still sleeping. So I kind of creep around the room and grab my PT kit. So my morning morning routine starts the night before, in that my evening routine is me putting my PT gear out. And this goes back. I have a goal setting program, which I call Power Goals program. And I talk about this as a barrier removal. So it's me removing an excuse from doing what I want to do, which is get up at 5 a.m. to go for my workout. So I put my PT gear out the night before. And the reason why I do that is because my wife is still in bed and she's still sleeping, and she's a light sleeper. So the more noise I make in the room, the higher potential I have for waking her up, and she needs more sleep than I do. So I'm trying to limit that excuse of, I don't have my PT gear out. Therefore, I don't want to make noise to wake up Julie. Therefore, I'm not going to get up and work out today. So that excuse is gone the night before. So I get up, I creep into her ensuite bathroom, and I grab that stuff, and I literally walk downstairs with it in my hand. I don't even get dressed in her bedroom. And then it's the first 30 minutes is for me, it's just prepping to get my workout in, because I don't like getting up right away and boom, starting a weight workout or a cardio workout within 5:05. So it's hydration, shaking out the cobwebs, warming up the body, doing some stretches, all those things, setting up, right? Getting my weights out. And it's kind of both mentally preparing for getting into the workout as well as physically preparing for the workout. So from there, from 5:20 to 5:30 is up till 6:15 is when I'm like going at my workout. At that point, my family's starting to stir. So I got my wife, I got 2 young boys, and they're actually out of the house just due to all of our schedules earlier than I am. So I help get them ready, get them out of the house. After that, then it becomes my personal time of taking care of me. So I will either meditate, I'll get reading in. I like to do my reading. I'll also do some work on moving forward leadership, because it's a side hustle for me. I'm still working full time at the Army, in the Canadian Army. So the unit, luckily right now, the unit I'm in, the job I'm in, we get time in the morning for PT. So I obviously take my PT time earlier, but then I use the time after my family is gone for working on moving forward leadership. And then by 8:30, I am actually set up, and then I head out to go to work. So by the time that I leave the house at 8:30 in the morning, I have worked out, I have read, I have done social media posts, I have responded to emails, I might have done a podcast interview like we're doing right now. All this stuff before 8:30 in the morning. That's
awesome, man.
Right.
That's awesome.
It goes back to, like you said, we didn't have that saying. We don't have that saying in the Canadian Army that we do, but it's true. I've done more by 8:30 than most people will do during the day. And to me, it's like, okay, I've eliminated all the excuses now, or the potential for reprioritization, because something pops up throughout the day that is like, I had this amount of time. I have, between 3 and 4, I was planning on doing this. But for example, yesterday, my oldest was a little bit sick, and I had to pick him up earlier from our daycare provider. Mm-hmm. So if I had planned to do something at that point in time, which normally I don't have any worries about, then it's gone. But now, because I do it in the morning, that potential doesn't exist because it's done.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man.
So yeah, I'm with you. I love the morning routines and stuff. So I guess what I'm thinking is, let's think about where we were before we even got into doing this. And for you, how can someone, go like, yes, I get it, guys, but I need to get started. Where do I get started with this? Right now, my morning routine is waking up late, jumping in the shower, getting dressed, grabbing something quick to eat, or if at all, and hitting the drive-through on my way to work while I'm like texting on, replying to emails at red lights and all this other stuff. How do I actually establish a morning routine that works for me, that I can, achieve the types of things that you guys are achieving? What would you say to that person?
Well, selfishly, I would tell them to buy my book and follow the 0530 blueprint. But if they weren't able to do that, I would say you have to do what every single other person that has a super successful morning routine has done, and that is you have to take action. One of the biggest things is, I know people that have read hundreds of books but have never taken action on any of it. So at the end of the day, how effective is that? The best thing you can do, even though I hate alarm clocks, more specifically, I hate the snooze button. I think the snooze button is scarier than socialism, but that's a whole nother topic. For me personally, the best thing you can do is you can set your alarm for a half an hour earlier tomorrow morning than you did today. And you can wake up and you can fight the urge to hit that snooze button the same way you would fight someone trying to kidnap your child or your spouse. And once you do that, you've made the first step towards a successful morning routine. You've done something different today, or I should say tomorrow, than you've done for the last 2, 4, 12, 15, 20 years. You've made a change, and there's a whole bunch of research on there. Different research supports different numbers on how long it actually takes to form a new habit. Some people say it's 20 days. Some people say 42, 66. At the end of the day, none of that really matters. What matters is that you're taking action and you're not saying, okay, on Monday, I don't care what day it is. If it's Tuesday, then tomorrow morning, Wednesday, today is Friday, boom, tomorrow, Saturday. Who cares if it's the weekend? For me personally, I get the best work out of my whole week done Saturday morning between 6 a.m. and about 10 a.m. That's my most productive work. And I love Mondays. And Saturday mornings for me are super productive. So no matter what it is, if you're listening to this podcast on a Friday, wake up Saturday morning, doesn't matter what you have going on, get up a half an hour earlier and start following. And the biggest thing too is writing it down. You've got to have a plan. All the morning routines, all the goal setting courses, all the leadership courses, all the different things out there. If you're not writing it down, then what's the point? What is a map? A map is broken down. It's a massive action plan. You have to have a battle plan. If we're going on a deployment, just like and I know, there is so much written down and so much planned out. And then we have a contingency plan, and there's usually a contingency plan for the contingency plan. It's over preparing. It's over prepping because shit's going to go wrong, especially in war. And you've got to treat your morning routine like war. You really do, especially in the beginning when it's new. And even after you've been doing it for a while, because it's easy to get complacent and take your eye off the prize. The biggest thing is just to take action. Set your alarm clock for a half an hour earlier tomorrow morning. Get up and get moving. Doesn't matter what you do. Get up and get moving. Do something productive. Reward yourself. One of the first things I do after I smile and after I make the bed is I drink quickly because I'm thirsty. I rehydrate my body because I haven't had water for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours. So I drink room temperature water. I don't want to shock my internal system too much. So I'm drinking room temperature water, and I'm respecting and hydrating my body. So I'm giving back to myself first. I've already smiled. I've already put myself in a positive state. I've already made the bed. That's a task completion. I've hydrated myself. And now what am I going to do? Now I'm going to continue to reward myself and continue to check things off. It's just small steps at a time, but the most important thing is taking action. And if there's not enough big enough motivator in your life, just think about your family. Think about the guy that your wife or your husband wants, and think about what you are now. Think about the person your kids need. How squared away are you? How physically fit are you? How financially sound are you? All these things that your family and friends depend on. Start working towards that guy or gal. And it starts with getting up and taking action immediately. It's so easy to stay in bed. It's hard to get up, especially in Chicago when it's cold and it's toasty, cold outside and it's all toasty under those covers. I don't want to get up. I got up at 5:30 this morning, just like I always do. There's days I don't want to get up. And there's certainly days I don't want to take a cold shower in the morning because it sucks. But I do it because it makes me harder. It makes me more accountable, and it makes me more disciplined. And just take action. That's the biggest thing.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I think that's such an important message right now, because this episode's releasing on the 30th of December. We are literally just 2 days away from 2021. And I'm sure right now in most listeners' heads is, I got New Year's resolutions. I'm going to kick off either 1st or 2nd of January. I think the most important aspect that you just said is that, why are you waiting? Do it now. Start it today, whenever you're listening to this podcast, whether that's the 30th of December right away, or maybe you're on a delayed schedule where you got to catch up like me, that takes a couple days to get to new releases. So maybe this is the 31st or the 1st or the 2nd of January. I don't care when it is. Maybe it's May in 2021. Doesn't matter. But if you have a plan and you're saying, in a week or in a month or a certain day, I'm going to start doing this, then why are you waiting? You're already setting yourself up for failure. And that's the message I love hearing from you right now. Now, Brent, man, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've truly enjoyed it, but all good things must come to an end. As we wind down the show, I do got a last couple questions for you. The first being a question I ask all the guests here at Moving Forward Leadership, that according to you, Brent Magnussen, what makes a great leader?
It's an awesome question. And I'm sure you heard me pause because I want to give a completely honest answer and not a bullshit answer that's going to make a certain amount of people happy. For me personally, and everyone's different, and I take in my time growing up, having awesome parents who led by example. I take my time in the military, having been around some phenomenal leaders in training, in deployments. I take my time as an entrepreneur, having phenomenal mentors. And I take my time as a guy who's only been married for a couple of years, who has a wife that just leads by example every day. And I think the biggest thing that I can say is the most important thing, the number one thing about leadership is leading yourself. Now, let's just go a little further because that's easy to say. The number one thing, you don't control much in the world. I can't control here in the U.S. I can't control whether, regardless of how important they say my vote is, I can't control who the next president is. I can't control the racial divide in this country. I can't control the flipping coronavirus. And I can't control what wars our politicians get us into. What I can control are my standards and the decisions I make. And I can control those every single hour of every single flipping day. And so can you. And you can make a decision right now to start leading yourself. And that starts with discipline and consistency. Step up in those areas, even if it's just one notch. If you're at a 2 now, move up to a 3. And once you start getting some consistency, you will get to a 9 or a 10 faster than you can possibly imagine. And it's the best feeling in the world knowing you're leading yourself. Because once you start leading yourself, it spreads like wildfire to the people around you. And that's an amazing thing.
Love it. That's absolutely powerful and so true, and a great way to wrap up this conversation. But I think even a better way to wrap up this conversation is by you giving yourself a shameless plug and letting people know where can they find you, how they can follow you, and where can they buy the book and all those good things. So when we do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just go to Amazon. Roger Up is the name of the book. And Roger Up is the title I chose because it's a term we use in the Army when you think you're completely smoked, when you think your body and your mind has nothing left. I promise you, you've got 20 to 30% more fight left in you regardless of your personal beliefs. I promise you. And that's what rogering up is. When you're stuck and things are just terrible and you think you're done, you can roger up. It's a mantra we embrace in the military. It's one I embrace now as a tax-paying civilian. And just rogering up every day in your personal life, regardless of what it is so important. So go to Amazon, roger up, and you can follow me on Facebook at Brent Magnussen. There we go.
Awesome, man. Again, it's a pleasure. For the audience, as always, it's easy for you. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/148. Brent, this is the last show of 2020, the year that everyone wanted to end quicker than most years. But what a great way to end the show, and having you on as a guest. I truly appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you and everything that you've done. All the best in 2021 to you, to the audience out there. Let's get it going. Let's get it going by getting it going right now, today in 2020 still. So again, thanks so much.
And thank you, Scott. And something I haven't said yet, and I'm a U.S. Army guy. You're a Canadian Army guy, but I do want to thank you for your service. It's selfless service. I appreciate that you have a wife and a few kids, and they know the sacrifice you make. So whether you're in Canada or the U.S., service is very important. And I thank you for that service. And thanks again for having me on. I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
No, absolutely. Awesome. All right, that's all I got for you fine folks today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And most importantly, I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, remember, R², S², right? Rate and review the show so that it gets a little bit noticed, a bit more. But most importantly, I can help more people, because that's what I'm here for. That's what my guests are here for, is to help more people become better leaders and not being bosses, right? So remember that. R², rate and review. S, share the show. Share this show with someone who you think can relate to the podcast as a whole and today's topic. And then finally, subscribe. Subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And you can do that via your podcast playing app of choice through movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stop bossing and start leading. Take care now.